Hi, and welcome to Coaching Voices podcast. I'm Pravin Sharma, an executive and leadership coach and consultant with over 2 decades of experience in the industry. I truly believe in the transformative power of coaching and the profound impact it can have on people's lives. In each episode, we dive into candid conversations with seasoned coaches, exploring what coaching really is and whether it's the right path for you. Together, we uncover how you can unlock your full potential and step confidently into leadership roles within your organization. Engaging in a conversation with Victor Hugo Certuche, exchanging ideas and insight on the latest industry trends would likely be a thought-provoking and forward-thinking experience. He would bring a unique blend of practical knowledge and visionary thinking, especially considering his expertise in transformation and innovation. With a focus on how managers must become more adaptive, servant-oriented leaders, and how the shift is crucial for navigating organizational change in today's fast-paced environment was one of the topics that we discussed. Insight on impact of digital transformation with artificial intelligence on the rise and what new trends are shaping the industry landscape was another topic that we discussed. And without further ado, please welcome Victor Hugo Certuche to our show. Hey Victor, welcome to Coaching Voices podcast. How are you today?
All right, Pravin. How are you doing?
I'm doing really good. Thank you so much for asking. Victor, you've been a pioneer in the field of Agile and its transformation. So I would like to start off our conversation by talking to you about your Agile coaching journey and your experiences.
All right. So I'm 62 years old. I'm getting ready to be 63. I started as a university professor, and then I moved into the private space because, as we know, teaching usually do not pay much, and I was offered a significant amount of money as a software engineer. I spent some time doing that, but then I realized that, especially at the time, it was more of an art. It was not really much of a discipline. So everybody will come up with their own perspective and their own way of approaching things, and there was a lot of inefficiency. So when we decided to move, at that point, I was living in Colombia, South America, but we moved to the States with my wife, and I went back to school. I went to Arizona State University, and then I went into a master's in computer science, focusing in software engineering and some other things. As a matter of fact, at the time, I was studying artificial intelligence as part of my master's. And then I clearly understood that the academic aspect of software engineering was very far away from the commercial side. So at that point, I decided that I wanted to be a coach and I wanted to help organizations become more organized in the type of work that they did. As soon as I finished my studies, I went back into the private space, and on purpose, I started taking on different roles. So I was a developer for a while. I was an architect for a while. I took jobs as test manager. I was doing all kinds of jobs to try to understand the different perspectives so that I could be more effective in teaching and coaching. And then about 6 years later, I went into Unified Process, Rational Unified Process, which was the predecessor to Agility. That was at the time that the three amigos, Rumba, Jacobson, and Butch, they created the Rational Company. They were obviously computer scientists, and they brought up great ideas. They created a pretty good framework. Unfortunately, the industry took the document perspective of that framework and completely destroyed the framework So towards the end of the 1990s, I became disillusioned with it. And I started looking at all the things that were coming at that point. This is pre-Agile. So I was looking at Scrum, I was looking at extreme programming, I was looking at some of the things that were coming up. Right. And then soon after, 2001 is when the Agile Manifesto came in, and I went in full force. So I was looking for companies that were doing that kind of work, found a couple of those. Then I went really deep into Agile, understood the Agile as a framework for teams. And then towards the in the middle of the early 2000s, I started to see that the Agile was a good framework, not only for teams that it could scale, but there was nothing around that will help it to scale. And so I started doing some research, and it took me about 2 or 3 years to finally connect with Dean Leffingwell when he was starting to create SAFe. And then Les was coming on the other side. So there were some attempts. Even Scott Ambler had joined IBM after IBM purchased Unified Process, so Rational Unified Process. Mm-hmm. And Scott Ambler was trying to salvage some of that and create a disciplined Agile delivery that basically went nowhere. When I saw that SAFe was a good alternative, I became SPC certified with Dean Leffingwell as the instructor. And from that point on, I navigated towards enterprise Agile coaching and getting more in companies that were trying to scale. Was very early. It took some time, but finally I got into it. And that's kind of what I've been doing for a while. Now, at this point in time of my career, where I'm kind of early retirement, I'm starting to see how I can continue to contribute. So I decided to partner with many organizations that do training, and they called me up, and I did the training for them all over the world. And that obviously is related to Agile and SAFe and things like that. On the personal side, I was very excited when Google started working on machine learning and some of the early LLMs, because I was, as I said, that was one of my areas of interest in doing my master's program. At the time, I was using Automata in parallel computers that were very expensive, but most of that was predicated on logical programming, like Prolog and Smalltalk and things like that. That was just not scalable. That approach was never going to go anywhere. I became very intrigued with the developments that were happening in AI, and finally following with the transforms in what they were doing with the large language models and everything else. It became clear that they finally cracked the code. They were able to do that. And it comes kind of all the way around. The circle is finally closed, because now we have very intelligent frameworks that can actually do highly disciplined software development. So it is fascinating how that was my interest 30 years ago. I navigated through it, and then I came to the point where I see it, realize, because the code that is produced by these models is actually very, very, very effective. And that's pretty much the other aspect that I still dabble into, that I'm interested in. For example, gamification. I'm absolutely convinced that if it wasn't for the pandemic, gamification would have been the next wave. And that's mainly because most of the workforce now grew up with video games, and gamification was trying to bring those aspects of the processes, the frameworks, and the constructs of gaming into the workforce, so that we can get people motivated to do the work. So there are sprinkles everywhere.
Thanks for sharing that thought. What do you think about the mentoring, coaching, and consulting? Are these all the same, or obviously there are some kind of distinction between mentoring, coaching, consulting, therapy?
The way to think about it is teaching is a point in time. Typically, there is an engagement, 1 day, 2, 3 days, and then the person goes, provide instruction, and it goes away. Coaching, good coaching, by the way, is not staying with a company, with somebody forever, but much rather signing a contract that says, I'm going to stay with you for this amount of time based on the fact that this is what you're ready to do. And then mentoring is more of a passive shadowing with people, observing what they're doing and providing some guidance on fixing some of the things along the way. So it's a very, very different aspects that we cover in teaching coaching. I think coaching is enabling. So I look at it as coaching as a servant leader. So when I come into an organization, say, for example, we are coming into an organization and the organization says, yeah, we want to transform, because most of the companies do say that, but it is analyzing the landscape and figuring out how much transformation they can actually tolerate. And then setting up very specific and realistic goals on what is achievable within the time that you are going to be spending with them. So, for example, there would be an engagement, and I would say, hey, it looks like there is no need to scale. In your case, the teams that you have work on very different things. So there's no reason to put them together. So what we're going to do is optimize the work that they do as teams, and then work with the business so that the funnel of requirements or stories, whatever we want to call them, all that is flowing without interruption. I'm talking about lean. And then the teams are performing at the top pace. Mm-hmm. Now, if we go to and in that case, we might say this engagement might take probably a couple of sprints or a couple of iterations with each of the teams. You guys have 6 teams, so we should be done in about 6 months. We're done and go away. So it's coming up with very specific goals of what we want to do based on the landscape and delivering into those goals. Now, if the company decides, hey, this is cool, we would like to continue, that's fine. Now, initially, back in 20 years ago, coaching was about team coaching. It was all about getting with the teams. Mm-hmm. But now it's more about, if we're talking about something like scaling, mm-hmm. we're working with the collection of teams. They might be organized as an Agile release train. Mm-hmm. And regardless if it is safe or not, they mm-hmm. might be comprised in that way. And then as an enterprise coach, I'm coaching the top level so that they can coach down the line. And why do we do that? Because we don't want the teams to rely on the external coach. That coach is going to go away. We want to build trust with their own internal resources. So it might be the release train engineer. So I'm working with the release train engineer. I'm working with the product manager, working with the architects, so that they can go coach the Scrum Master, the POs, and the teams. So the nature of the engagement has changed dramatically as of now. And we'll talk about the anti-patterns that are happening. Yeah.
Victor, I'm just thinking about this team versus teaming concept. Well, matter of fact, the teaming concept was coined by a hardware professor by the name of Amy Edmondson, right? So the team is a pre-established team, like you can think of as a basketball team, right? They all are there together, right? And the teaming concept is these individuals, they do not know each other prior, and they all come together to solve a problem there, right? In an Agile, what we've seen is, the team goes through certain phases: forming, storming, norming, performing. And, when there is an addition or there's a replacement, or if somebody leaves the team goes back to the forming state again, right? So what are your thoughts about this teaming concept within an Agile transformation? Can you elaborate a little bit on that one, please?
That to me is an area that we need to probably review and revise with respect to the original Agile tenets. And the reason is that, for example, we go to an organization and that organization has product teams and they are organized in a particular way. Now, by the nature of having product teams, we have created silos. Those teams that specialize so much in a particular product, that are dedicated to that product, and that's the only thing they do, sometimes might not have enough work for a particular period of time.
Right.
While another group that is working on another product, it is overwhelmed, but they cannot help each other because they are segmented by products. So I really believe that we need to rely on nature and understand how nature works in order for us to succeed. And what I mean by that is, when we have in nature, if a cell lives for too long, we call it cancer, right? It starts behaving in a bad way. And when teams stay together for a long time, they tend to become stale. They tend to lose some efficiencies. So we need to build some dynamics into those teams so that we know when it is recommended that they start jumping and moving around. So, I can give you an example. I was working with a energy services company in Houston, and every PI at the beginning of the PI, team members were allowed to switch teams.
Right.
They could switch up to any team that they wanted. And that injected new blood into the teams and maintain a level of excitement and engagement and all that good stuff. Now, to the point that you make about norming, forming, storming, and performing, the problem is that Agile makes such a big fuss about teams when we truly need to talk about teaming, as you mentioned. We need to make sure that everybody that comes into the Agile space understands the norms or understands how that person is supposed to perform or deal with whenever they go into a team. And everybody should have the expectation that those teams are not going to be intact all the time. So it's kind of, if we all build proper API interfaces between team members, then they know how to communicate. So it's establishing those contracts that indicate this is how we perform as a team, and the teams should be working in the same way so that a team member can move from one place to the other without any problems. Now, in some organizations, they had this idea of the Brazilian restaurant where you have the red and green, and then people will flip their card on their cubicle to say, green, I'm ready to change, or red, I'm cool, I'm staying with this team. And that could happen at any point in time. So there was more fluidity, but that truly requires more maturity. You cannot do that initially because it's going to create a lot of chaos. So just like anything, the expectation is, if a company, and I've worked with large banks, especially in Mexico, that allow that to happen, and they were very successful and they became very, very powerful. They allow that to happen because they have onboarded everybody to that environment of trust, environment of collaboration, and understanding that your team is not more important than any other team, but much rather everybody's together in this to make everything work. So that ecosystem made it possible, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen everywhere, and it's very rare to see it.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with the cultural aspect of it as well, right? Because, a certain thing that works in Brazil doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work in Mexico versus, certain thing works there. So, yeah, I mean, definitely the culture plays a big role in shaping the team and its dynamics for sure. I want to ask you something about the gamification that you mentioned, right? Because you talked about that. And, since you're in more of the transformation, because, Agile coaching is give or take, it's a transformation no matter what, right?
Right.
So how do you leverage that gamification that you mentioned to drive the, not just the agile trend, I'm talking about the transformation in general in the organization and the impact that it'll have on employee engagement and their performance?
That's a very good question. So the way gamification normally works is we are trying to influence behavior on people. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we care about people being collaborative. We care about people being accountable. We care about them to be helpful to other people. So in the context of gamification, somebody that, for example, is a Scrum Master, they will get a badge when they successfully complete, for example, a PI where all the objectives are met and everything happens and all that stuff. Now, if that Scrum Master goes beyond their space in offering, for example, to be a backup for another Scrum Master when they might take some time off and do all these things, we have another badge for a Scrum Master that is able to work with multiple teams. What happens is that that badge that they exhibit, what it is a beacon for other Scrum Masters to know, oh, that person already went through that, so I can go and talk to them and get some information about it. So we're driving collaboration, we're driving accountability, we're driving the things that we care about, rather than driving individuality and driving competition and driving many other things. So badges are only given by the team. Those are not necessarily acquired because you did A, B, and C, and automatically you get a badge. It's the team that is saying, we definitely are giving you a badge because you're amazing, you're awesome, and then it becomes that light that everybody can see to follow. And then that works with anybody, POs and PMs and RTs and everybody, but it's just a matter of showcasing that they can do that. It definitely is tied to the performance when the company is doing it properly. Not many companies are at that point as we speak. Most of them still have people managers. But the idea is that those companies that truly transform, any performance review is based on what the team thinks about every individual. So it's different components on what I propose I will do for my career path in this year, along with what the team thinks about what I have achieved. So those badges and the performance go together. They are working together.
What I'm hearing from you is this particular gamification concept will create some inspiration to those who wanted to scale themselves and go into the next level, right? Obviously, you need to have that intrinsic motivation to succeed yourself in any organization that's given. But at the same time, introducing these kind of concepts will definitely help people to see in front of them exactly what's happening and how they can be the part of this solution.
Yeah, and we also need to be mindful that Peter principle, right? People will rise to the point of incompetence. And that is very true in every space, but more so in the technical side. Because, for example, developers, they see that the only path for them to go up is to become an architect or to become a CIO or whatever, just to make more money. Some people just like to be a developer. That is their calling. That's their passion. So if we build into it, you can accumulate points, you can accumulate badges, you can accumulate if you become multidisciplinary, where you're learning about testing and you're learning about business analysis and you're learning about many of the things, how to create architectural patterns. The company benefits because you are lowering the risk for the organization and you should be properly compensated. So all that compensation needs to be according to the skills that people are acquiring and exhibiting and using within the teams. Again, that is what's driving behavior. So if somebody wants to stay as a developer with good knowledge of testing and business analysis, they can stay there for the whole life, which is fine. We don't want to change that. But then we need to establish a career path so that they can feel that they are progressing and they are obviously increasing their income.
As we were talking earlier about the Agile team operates on its own, the autonomous team, as Daniel Pink also mentioned about autonomy, purpose, and mastery. But I've always seen that there is a manager who is accountable for the success of the team, I would say.
And the manager... Because that's my issue with Agile, the way it has been presented, especially by organizations like SAFE and many consulting companies, is they don't want to poke the bear. That's what it's all about. I don't have any problem poking the bear. So what was happening 25 years ago when we were going through the transition of the flattening of the organization is that we were switching from Taylorism, which is the old framework for scientific management. And unfortunately, you can Google it and you will find it, or you can use ChatGPT and you will find it, where Taylor will say, it's better if we assume that everybody is I don't want to use a bad word, but everybody is ignorant.
Yeah.
Right? And if anybody is not ignorant, then he should be promoted to manager. Right. And he uses even worse language than that. That has been the norm with most organizations. So that is the reason we have managers. Now, when we get into the space where we have information workers, that means these people are very, very knowledgeable. They are very capable. They are not, as he described, somebody that is ignorant, but much rather they really, really know. The only thing is they have not learned probably time management. They have not learned communication skills. They have not learned some of those things. And therefore, it's not that we need a manager for them. It's just that we need to provide the skill for those people to learn how to do proper time management, proper communication skills, and everything else. So once we do that, there is no purpose for a manager whatsoever. People need to be accountable. Who holds accountable? Somebody, the team. The team is the one that says, hey, you're not picking up your stuff. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. So if we really, really want those teams to be self-managed, self-disciplined, empowered to do their work, we need to remove the managers. I can give you plenty of anti-patterns.
Yeah. I mean, it's more like a broken window theory, right? I mean, if somebody's not performing, I mean, if you're writing a bad code, and if you left it unattended, then people tend to go and write the bad code again, because that's the norm. That's how it's been established. Like, for instance, the broken window theory, right? If you see the broken window somewhere, like, you have that tendency to break even more windows in there because it's already broken, right? So the same concept in team as well, that if somebody's not performing and if we let it ignore it, then other people will just follow, and then the team becomes like pretty much nothing. I mean, you can't even call that a team because it's not performing at all. So yeah, that's a great concept.
And then again, when we see that, well, we have Scrum Master team coaches. We have release train engineers. We have coaches that are working around to help them. And one of the organizations that I was working with, the PM was completing features and stories with the what, the how, the why, and everything in between. And I said to him, you are not dealing with people that don't know how to do stuff. Stop doing that. You tell them what and why, and they figure it out. And it was incredibly painful to see that person letting go. But once they let go, the teams just blossom. They came up with so many incredible approaches to do different things. And finally, that person realized that it was a great thing, and then it became the most incredibly promoter of the approach for the whole organization. So, it's like our kids. We cannot pretend that we're going to be around them when they are 40, 50, 60, 70. At some point in time, we're going to teach them how to live and let them live. They will fail, and that's okay, but they need to learn on their own.
Giving that autonomy is very, very hard. I don't know what's holding them back. There's some level of anchor that's out there. There's a book by David Arquette. I mean, he talked about like turn the ship around. It talks about how he was able to handle his, and he was in military. I mean, that's more like command and control, more strict. You know what I mean? Even that particular construct can work, then people should be more like lenient because it's an experiment, give or take. It's an experiment. Agile is the transformation itself is a biggest experiment, right? You don't know in the beginning whether or not it's going to fertile or no, right? You plant the seed and you wanted to see it grow. That's the whole thing. So when you're planting the seed, if you do not nurture it properly, then obviously it's not going to grow. So obviously you'll see some kind of like inconsistency in the team. And that's where the Scrum Master comes in play and say like, well, these are the things, if we improve, then, potentially we can hit that target, right? So that's kind of like eroding. I don't know if it's too many Scrum Master in the market, or I have no idea what's exactly is happening in there. But, well,
it is a combination of many, many things. Yeah, the first thing that we need to make sure that everybody understands is before Agile showed up 25 years ago, there was a playbook. And the playbook was you do your job, you learn time management, you learn how to manage projects, you learn all this stuff to become a manager. And then as your career to become an executive, another way up to become a CIO, CEO, whatever it is. Those people that were in that space, they play by the rules and they achieve those levels. And by doing that, they send their kids to college, they purchase a house. Then suddenly Agile shows up and he says, yeah, you guys are not required. Well, those people are going to fight to keep their place, naturally so. And the wobbling, and this is where I go back to the wobbling between companies like Scale Agile and many of these organizations saying, no, we need people managers. To do what? So we are still telling them, no, you're needed, when in reality, they are not. And this is exactly the same thing that is happening with developers or coders and AI. We knew for a very long time that at some point in time, that will be completely replaced. No question about it. And it's not that it's going to be replaced 100%, but rather than needing 20 developers, now you need 2 working with AI. So that is absolutely what is going to happen. The second part that is pretty, I would say, one of the most damaging things that SAFe has done, they combine Scrum Master and Agile Team Coach as a role. Now, I understand that they did it because the expectation is that Scrum Master will do that. However, when you look at a Scrum Master, how do you become a Scrum Master? Well, you can go to Scrum Alliance, pay $69 and get a certification. And you don't have experience and you're hired. Companies, in their quest for saving money, they went from, oh, you mean we don't have to pay Agile Team Coaches $100, $120, $150 an hour, and we can hire a Scrum Master for $30 an hour? Awesome. We can do that. That's great. Well, those people do not have the expertise to coach a team. They have no idea how to coach a team. I've seen maybe 2 Scrum Master in the last 6 or 7 years that can be truly called Agile team coaches. And the reason is that if they are team coaches, they wouldn't be doing performing Scrum Master role. So this is going to blow up so bad in the next few years because they will blame Agile for everything that is happening, when in reality, they removed the team coaches and Scrum Masters don't know what to do. So it's a combination of the two that is creating this mess that we have right now. So
we can do the whole RCA on why it happened, and there are so many unanswered questions in there. In a way, that company, when they advertise the job description, they're pretty much blunt in saying that you need to have this CSM certification, you need to have Safe 6 certification, you need to have PSI certification. All the certifications are a gate, so that what people are finding is like, okay, for me to get my foot in the door, I need this certification. Not just from the knowledge standpoint, but just from the certification standpoint. People are throwing themselves and then going anywhere just to get that certification, right? So you go like 2 days course to get your CSM, whatever. And then next thing you know is this guy is working in an organization, right? So it's a mess. It's obviously a mess. That's the requirement, and people are throwing the requirement. People are taking advantage of that by giving that level of 2 days crash, whatever it is, So the other thing you mentioned about the change, right? The change is a lot of people do not welcome changes because when the change happens, you're literally challenging the status quo, right? Because you're moving from one to next, And those people who've been in that particular industry or that particular position for X number of years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, they're already institutionalized in doing certain things in a certain way. Now, when you go there and then try to rock their boat, the thing is like, oh, my kids are in the college. I have to mortgage to pay. What I'm going to do if this happens. So the foremost thing for those people to do is to make sure by changing these, they're not going to be thrown out, but they're going to be more effective, right? So that's the communication piece that's missing, I think, in the industry right now.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So one of the things that I tend to post on LinkedIn is, especially for Agile coaches, is we need to make sure that if you're going to get into Agile coaching, you have some financial backup. And the reason is, if you do not, you're going to compromise your coaching. You're going to get to an organization, you're getting paid a pretty significant amount of money, but then you start to realize that the organization is not ready to transform. They are just paying good service. And since you are dependent on that money, the money that is coming from them, you're just going to stay quiet. On the other side, as I said, I developed a curriculum called Motivational Interviewing for Agile Coaching, which is based on motivational interviewing. It's a powerful framework to help people that have been in drugs, alcohol, or any of that, and has been proven to be very successful. And what this framework indicates is that you need to know how to read the space. You need to know how to read the people to know if they're ready and when they are ready, or how long is it going to take for them to be ready. So in my particular case, if I go to an organization, Capital One would be a classic one. I was there for 1 day at Capital One, right? So we talked for 6 months, and they said, yeah, we know what you do, and we want you to come in. And then I said, okay, let's give it a shot. So they said, yeah, but since you're in Houston, we will provide an apartment for you in San Antonio. I said, look, let's take one step at a time. Let me see what's going on. I went in and I had a conversation with one of the teams. The average age at that point was close to 70 because they were supporting a very old system. And this was the critical space that needed to go into transformation. And I had a conversation with them and they said, Victor, we are going to retire in the next few years. We are not going to even listen to you. So don't waste your time. And that same day, I said to the CIO, don't waste your money. This is not going to happen. I'm leaving. Right. And the CIO was very agreeable, very gracious, and he appreciated the honesty and all that. But I can only do that because, fortunately, I have some financial backing that allows me to do other things, right? So as you mentioned in the introduction, the whole idea is that if you're going to get into coaching, if anybody's going to get into coaching, they need to have as a goal at some point in time become financially independent, so that they can provide adequate coaching to those organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a very, very good point. From your experience, from your perspective, what are the good traits any coaches should have to be successful when they go and work in an organization?
I think the most important one is knowledge. So make sure that we do not underestimate knowledge. So learning about what the company or the client is going through and understanding how we can provide service to them and going really deep. So, for example, energy company that I was working with, they decided to use a homebrew of scaling that was kind of using a little bit of Agile at scale and some other pieces. And I came in and I had the conversations with them and I kind of understood what was going on. And then I was able to come in and explain how to take different pieces from different frameworks, put them together, and then use them in a more successful way. By the fact that I knew what they were doing, the fact that I knew in depth the frameworks that they were trying to work with, gave me credibility. And that's what you care. You really care about making sure that you build credibility with them, because in the end, if what you convey, you're trying to coach, they are not sure that you know your stuff, they will start doubting, and that will create a gap that is not going to be easy to close. So building not only that, but also working on the personal reassurance and making sure that we are presenting ourselves with proper attitude, as in, I know what I need to do. I fully understand what you guys are doing, and I know what is required is extremely important. So comments that I've heard, that I've been lucky, very privileged to hear, when somebody says, hey, you really know your stuff. Or, for example, in one of the last engagements, this lady came in and she said, hey, I would suggest that when you convey something to the teams or to everybody, you make sure that you explain that those are options, because they take your word as the gospel. And, that is good feedback, because what that means is I'm probably taking it beyond. I have to be mindful of saying, all we're doing is experiments. Agile is no more the scientific method applied to the business. And we're going to run experiments, and we're going to test this out slowly but surely. And most importantly is to explain clearly to everybody what is the outcome that we're trying to achieve short term, and validate that those outcomes are getting in place to gain that credibility. And then explain that if they don't follow certain aspects, these are some of the consequences of not doing so, and not necessarily blame them for that, but much rather say, pay attention to it, and then slowly but surely they start listening, because they see, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Based on your experience and the exposure, I would say the reason I'm saying exposure is like you have worked in countless industry. I mean, predominantly, I think you work in oil and gas, but you work in other industry as well. Mm-hmm. So from your experience, how important it is for the coaches to have that business acumen?
Extremely important. Extremely important. Players, what do they do? What makes them stand up? Now that we have ChatGPT or Copilot, it makes it very easy to learn about that. But when I was speaking with some of the directors and executives, and in their own terms, and saying, look, this company, AIG, is one of the first ones, and the reason they are at that level is because of their financial ratings. And they were pretty surprised that I knew the whole space, and they opened up to some of the challenges that they have, why they are not pursuing a better rating, because that will imply having more capital, and having more capital increases the risk. So having those conversations are so critical. Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned, I've been lucky enough to work with health organizations like Amgen. I work with fairly large companies, banks, financial institutions, pharma, you name it, any organization. And to bring that perspective gives you full credibility at every level that you know what you're talking about.
Pulling that experience from your past and then bring it into the present so that you can make the future brighter.
Yeah, and then also connecting what their objectives are to, and the executives couldn't get it. They just couldn't get it. So I related, this was a financial organization, I related a bank that we worked in Mexico, and something spectacular they did during the hackathon, and how that particular activity moved them from ninth place to first place in Mexico. And I could see this executive's attitude light up. It's like, oh, wait, that changes the whole thing. I said, yeah, you cannot gain significantly unless you provide space for creativity and innovation. If you continue the normal path and the normal growth, you will never outpace your competition. And at that point, they became the biggest supporter of all the hackathons. And indeed, we were getting a ton of value out of it. So, as you said, is connecting the successes from other industries and bringing those insights and then connecting them with their internal goals and saying, this is how you can achieve it. And hopefully that gives them more support for the transformation that you're trying to provide.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, Victor, I want to go to the very beginning of this conversation. You mentioned your age and, but at the same time, the learning never stops, right? What's next for you?
I'm really enjoying going back to the basics, which is teaching. I really love that. Probably going to partner with some organizations and maybe do it on my own to start not only providing training as training itself, but to add to the training some coaching hours. Because in the classes, what I typically hear people say is, I wish I could work with you a little bit longer beyond the training because of the insights and everything, all the experience that you have, but then the training is over. So I'm looking forward to having those touch points with people. And then I'm also actively working on developing a framework to test if an organization is ready to transform and how far they will take it. So that when if I go as a coach or a coach goes to the organization, hopefully they can use that survey to say, you are ready for a team transformation, you're not ready for DevOps, you might not be ready for all the way portfolio, and then focus on the areas where they are ready to transform and avoid all this churn that happens when, as a coach, you're trying to do something and the company is not ready, but you just don't know. You encounter resistance in many places. I'm also trying to promote some of the training around motivational interviewing and helping coaches read and understand the language when somebody is exhibiting resistance and what to do when that happens, or when you start to see opportunities for transformation, which is the point where you start talking about a plan and doing things. So that's something that I believe is missing. So I'm trying to see if I can get SAFE to include it in the framework. I think it's very, very critical. And just continue to promote and help other people that are taking on this journey.
Hey, Victor, we're coming to an end of this conversation, so I'm going to open up this floor to you. If you have anything that you want to add to our conversation, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much.
Sure. About 10 years ago, a good friend of mine from childhood called me and he said, Victor, I don't understand why is it that you're not a multi-billionaire, because you're always coming up with ideas. And that got me thinking. And then I was lucky enough to find a book by the rabbi, and the book is called Thou Shalt Prosper. And in one of the paragraphs, it said that many people have a pretty bad negative connotation around money, especially in specific types of upbringing. So I grew up in a Catholic family, and as you probably know, and people will know, in the Catholic faith, money is seen with a negative connotation. So what he was explaining, the rabbi was explaining in his book, is that Jewish people see money as a way to help people. The more money they can acquire, the more people they can help. And that truly transformed my mind. So I started several projects, and we have a company in Colombia that helps people that have no way of getting financing so that we can give them a car. And we do the same with houses. So we're trying to promote that, and hopefully it's not that I don't make money, because I make plenty of money in doing that, but at the same time, it's giving people an opportunity to become visible, because I believe that capitalism works for as long as everybody is in the same playing field. If we're not, then I do not believe that is true capitalism. So that was kind of the first stage of that happening. The second stage happened now when I'm thinking about retiring because of my age. And I just thought, okay, what am I going to do? And then I decided to reach out to some organizations through a good friend of mine that you probably remember him, Hasleen. He connected me with a company in the Middle East that does some training. And then that became very powerful, because in doing so, I'm connecting with people. For example, right now I'm teaching a class around product management and product ownership. And I see that those people might not have employment at this point in time. And I'm trying to guide them through, if you follow this, if you learn this, if you get really good at this, you can find a job, because those opportunities are out there. So it's another way for me to give back. Because I've been very lucky through my whole life. I encountered great mentors that helped me along the way. And I think this is the time for me to give back.
Just think about, your idol is Dean Leffingwell. I don't know how old he is, so don't stop. Go do what you have to do. Do not let that age stop you from doing anything. I mean, that's my final thought. Victor,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you want to say something? Go ahead.
No. I was going to say, it's not about age. It's about figuring out where you can be the most effective.
Yep.
And I'm not overstaying, right?
Yep, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Victor, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, no, it's been a great pleasure talking with you, and I appreciate it. I wish you the best in your endeavors. I'm sure you're going to be extremely successful, so looking forward to it.
All I need is the support from you. Thank you. Have a great day, okay?
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That was Victor Hugo Certuche in a conversation with Pravin Sharma at Inside Ignite Coaching's Coaching Voices podcast. You can contact Victor at VCERTUCHE@hotmail.com. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Coaching Voices podcast. I hope today's conversation gave you valuable insights into the world of coaching and leadership. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps others find the show and supports us in continuing to bring you inspiring content. Do not forget to share this episode with anyone you think might benefit from the discussion. And if you're looking to explore coaching further or have any questions, please feel free to connect with us. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing, keep leading, and stay curious.